Hi there. This is a follow-up video on the Daeron Targaryen spy photo leak from House of the Dragon Season 3 filming. I already made a full video just on general principle that we have spy photos of Daeron, hooray, we're seeing these for the first time, and that reliable spy channels have said actor Charlie Gordon was cast as Daeron. I don't know the specifics, they didn't tell me, just that these are sources I believe who've been accurate for the past 2 years. But this is breaking news, and within hours we got better quality spy photos, which is why my release was delayed. That rather than instantly put it out, I went, we're getting new photos like every hour or two, let's wait and see. Some of these were just their better quality photos. Some of them showed some things we didn't expect. Well, for starters, they already introduced a change that Matt Smith as Daemon Targaryen is personally present at the Hightower army camp. This is a change. But in and of itself, I felt this was fine. That they're having a parlay. That these things happen, that things done through written correspondence in a book, you need to shift to live actors exchanging dialogue for a TV show. I understand that. By the way, for the rest of this, I'm going to refer to him as Matt Smith, so I don't keep mixing up Daemon and his nephew Daeron. I realize switching back and forth is confusing, so Matt Smith and his nephew Daeron. But what the new photos show very clearly is Ormund Hightower bending the knee and presenting his sword to Matt Smith as if in surrender. And looking over the footage, fan spies have noted that when his nephew Daeron walks along from Ormond then into a tent with Matt Smith, Daeron is always holding his hands behind his back. And they might be tied behind his back. We can't see specifically if there's a rope in there. There aren't iron manacles, but they might be tied together. And even if they're not, it's just, why is he going over there? And if nothing else, Ormond is literally bending the knee and offering his sword in surrender. What's going on here? People are freaking out online and freaking out hard. Then again, these are the type of people who are prone to freaking out hard at everything they see and hear. The people who are really hating on House of the Dragon with limited evidence, because, there were problems with the strike and other things, and yes, things are changing from the books, but that whole principle of only Nixon could go to China, that when people who were defending the show start turning on it, is when it matters. That the people yelling out, this show is woke, this is people making stuff up just to be for fun, the people who are always saying that, boy who cried wolf, it kind of loses its impact. Versus if even mainstream channels are like, we're horrified at this, because the simple reality is we don't know. That we would have to see this in full context. And it's really annoying that, why are my videos taking a while? Because I've been sifting through weeks of filming reports to try to cross-reference and figure what's going on through evidence, cited evidence. People seem to think that's an attraction of my channel that few others do. I wish more did. It's really infuriating. I pull this work into this, sifting through evidence, and morons try to clickbait with, all I have to do is talk to a microphone for 5 minutes, say, this is woke garbage, I hate these showrunners, Kathleen Kennedy must be doing this, and then stand on my shoulders to call themselves tall. Stand on the shoulders of all the actual spy reporters, because I don't do that much work compared to House of the Dragon is the huge Twitter channel doing this, Wake the Dragon. They do more work than me. It's easy to churn out a lot of clickbait, just yelling and going, oh, well, these showrunners hate us and stuff, versus sifting through evidence is hard work and takes time. If we're rationally looking at what's going on. Now, I'll admit, I am worried. It seems like they're changing things around what's going on here. But then when I actually look, on Reddit and all places of things people are accusing that are so beyond that we have evidence directly contradicting. Well, it couldn't be that because of this. Case in point, people saying that, oh, the Hightowers must surrender to Daemon after the Battle of Tumbleton in the finale. We objectively know that this scene, whatever they're filming, is not from episode 8. It is from episode 4. Because Claire Kilner is the director of episode 4, and she is visibly in these spy photos. This is mid-season. So I'm worried that they're making ripple effects for other changes later in the season. I don't know. But there's a few things we can rationally, process of elimination, figure out here. First, some people are honestly accusing that the Hightower army will have no major battles, that there will be no Battle of Tumbleton, for example. To ask a dumb question, do you seriously think that the production team would create a full Hightower army camp set like this, the scale of this thing, with hundreds of extras, costumes, weapons, and armor, if the entire army was going to just surrender at the end of the season without a fight? We know from other leaks that the season 3 finale is the Battle of Tumbleton with the Hightower army. So we could dismiss that out of hand. It's some of this rampant speculation. It just goes into you're trying to think of the worst thing possible rather than what the evidence says. That I'm openly surprised, I've said this before, that the trolls needed to turn Sarah Hess into the new Kathleen Kennedy, and I'm openly surprised that they don't accuse her of eating dogs because she's Korean. You know? That it stopped even being, this is the evidence, this is what I think they're doing, I disagree with it, but thinking of the worst imaginable thing and then going, and they assuredly must have done that. I really don't understand that mentality. Are you that bored? Are you that goddamn weak? That you don't put thought into this, that it's just become meme culture? I don't know. Sorry, just I'm not arguing with people who dislike whatever they're changing here. I'm really against, you're not even looking at the hard evidence we have. The hard evidence is that there apparently is Ormund surrendering in this, and that it's episode 4. So, and this isn't even, like a obscure thing. I was in the Twitter thread with House of the Dragons when he was posting yesterday these big photos, and I said, well, what episode is this? And he posted in response, here is a photo with Claire Kilner visibly in it. It must be episode 4. He said that publicly more than me. I'm surprised people don't pay attention to him when he is saying this. So what's going on here? On the other side of things, I am terrified about blind faith. But it seems like the pendulum swing from one end to the other, that we went from the blind faith that people had in Benioff and Weiss to nihilistic, blind hatred for the House of the Dragon showrunners is startling. That instead of assessing, well, I think that some of these scenes were rough in season 2 due to the writer's strike, I have seen morons making clickbait saying, well, clearly Sarah Hess thought that episode 8 ending with Rhaenyra Allison scene was the perfect ending to a season, when we objectively know that director Alan Taylor openly said, oh yeah, it was meant to be a 10-episode season. I was supposed to direct the Battle of the Gullet in episode 9. That we objectively know that Sarah Hess and Condell never wanted the 8th episode to be aired as a finale, because it wasn't. But just the back and forth of this, I want to acknowledge that there was a time we had blind faith in things, and worse, we would make up fan excuses. And this was so frustrating in Game of Thrones that rather than acknowledge that things were changing and getting weird, people would, or defending the changes, people would just latch on to, this isn't a change, next season will retroactively reveal it was a fake out. We called it honeypotting, because it started as early as season 2 when, instead of Jane Westerling, we got Talissa, and the theory was, well, she's a Lannister honeypot spy, honeypotting. So we'd reapply to other things as they happened, and the truth of that was they changed it because they wanted to show off Richard Madden as a romantic lead. It was always about showing off the actors. It's not really a romance in the story. They wanted it to be a generic romance in the show to make the show more popular, to show off an actor. That's it. It wasn't some ingenious fake out. I think initially they might have even half-heartedly had some half-formed ideas of making her a spy. That's not the point. The point was showing off the actors. Why did they change her name? Because this was like the first big change. Martin said, "This isn't the character I wrote. Can you change the name? It's clearly a TV-only character. I didn't write a romance." So they did. Imagine if they changed the names every time. So, like, other things like Sansa bizarrely and without clear explanation marrying Ramsay Bolton, or it's truly incoherent how Sansa quote-unquote defeated Littlefinger in season 7. Genuine incoherence of what is going on here. I can't even verbalize what's happening if I'm just typing it out. Oh no, you see, it's so stupid because Littlefinger faked his death with a faceless man. He'll pop up again in season 8. And that's what disgusts me about all this. You see, the people, it's not just defending or criticizing a change is one thing. It's the people who can't defend the change, but they're in such denial that they'd rather theorize, no, they're not doing that, they're doing something else. So I'm painfully aware, I'm telling you from the Nixon Goes to China principle, I am painfully aware of the dangers of blind faith and making up theories. But on the other hand, we have people going, they're having Ormund surrender to Daemon after the Battle of Tumbleton. That's episode 8. We know the director is in these spy photos. This is episode 4. We know this. So what are the current theories of what's going on? If we're going to steer a course between blind faith and nihilistic doubt, what could be going on? Well, option 1 is it actually is Ormund surrendering to Daemon and we don't get Tumbleton, and they made all these actors and sets for nothing, which really doesn't make sense. Purely from a logistics standpoint, this isn't Benioff and Weiss. They don't make things for staircases to nowhere and stuff. They make things for a reason. You make something this big, it's doing something. Option 2 is that Ormund was originally going to surrender, but then when Daeron goes into a tent with his uncle and talks about it, he realizes, you wouldn't be offering us generous surrender terms if you thought it was easy to beat us, so on second thought, Ormund, stand up, we're not going to surrender. I'm starting to lean against that for option 3, which I didn't come up with, but has been suggested by some, and I said, not that I have blind faith in this, I don't, just it has enough merit on a vague level that I think they're doing something like this. I like the phrase, I can't tell exactly what they're doing, but if you throw a tablecloth over it, I could see the general outline of what they're doing. I think this surrender is a ruse by the Hightowers. So the theory is it's a ruse by the Hightowers. They're pretending to surrender just to buy time. And moreover, this is a fake Daeron that they're passing off to Matt Smith because he doesn't know what his own nephew looks like. To buy time while the Blacks have more dragons because of the dragon season they're trying to recover. That, well, couple of points sold me on this. First, it might be a nod to the book, because years later after the war, it's mentioned that there was more than one imposter claiming to be the real Daeron Targaryen returned, but they were all exposed as frauds only after causing a lot of trouble. So you see, for the book fandom, and Connolly is a fan of the book, even though he's changing things, but within the book fandom, introducing a false Daeron, or Fadaeron, if you will, this imposter Daeron, would actually be a nod to something that happens later in the books. But that's just a little thing that might be coincidence. The real thing that got me leaning towards this is the second point, the core of it. Step back, the whole Doyleist perspective thing of what are the writers trying to do? What is their goal in doing all of this? What are they trying to emphasize? Is there something to emphasize? Yeah, that Daeron is such an outsider to the rest of his family that they don't even know what he looks like. That his own mother had to ask what he's like. I don't think Allison has even seen him in the flesh in 10 years. And they don't have, like iPhones and cameras and things. So I think even Allison would have difficulty recognizing him, much less Rhaenyra, or Daemon was living in Pentos. the few years that Daeron was a little child before he got sent to Oldtown. So, yeah, I can see how the whole point of Daeron is he's this outsider to the rest of the family who was sent away. As a writer, they might want to emphasize that to the point that you could pass off an imposter to Daemon who just looks vaguely Valyrian with sharp features, and it would be enough to fool him, because he really doesn't know what he looks like. And what really sold me, got me leaning towards that, is if you look at the footage, Matt Smith as Daemon, when apparently this is the first time he's meeting Daeron, he holds his hand under Daeron's chin to examine his face. Think about that. That the actual direction of the scene is emphasizing, objectively, there is this emphasis on, oh, here's his physical appearance. And it could just be him going, oh, you look like your father, and then nothing after that. But it was enough points in that direction I was starting to wonder that why would they be doing this? Is this necessarily the real Daeron if the scene is making a point that Daemon is examining his face, this nephew he has never met in the flesh? And a third issue around this, less distinct than that, is the relative secrecy HBO has kept around which actor is really playing Daeron. This whole saga we've been on for years, of even since season 3 was casting, is when it got really specific of, okay, why aren't you telling us this? That when it got genuinely weird when they announced the other Hightower army leaders, like, why didn't they announce the Daeron actor when they announced Ormund? Or John Roxton, who were the same set. Ormond, John Roxton, people from the Reach storyline, and they didn't announce Daeron. Maybe because it was a relatively unknown actor, we knew that means it's going to be, 16-year-old or something. Maybe because there's an imposter Daeron, and there's more than one person playing, quote-unquote, Daeron, or they wanted to hide it. Then again, sometimes there's a lot of movies and TV shows where there's an imposter, like pretending to be the president or something, but in the official credits, they're credited as President Whitmore, but then you later find out that's an imposter. The real person was credited as the janitor or something. I'm making up an example, but there's more than one way to do this. Maybe someone else is credited differently. I mean, in season 3, Ramsay Bolton was technically credited as Boy, because they didn't want people to know who he was. I can't say for certain that Charlie Gordon actually is Daeron, just because reliable sources told us that. I haven't seen the evidence they saw. And it might have even said Daeron on things they saw, but which Daeron if there's an imposter? And I could go either way on this. I don't have a problem with Charlie Gordon playing Daeron, but maybe Charlie is playing an imposter Daeron. Or vice versa, that these spy photos are blurry enough that they're decent enough quality. All of us in the spy community have admitted we can't tell if this is Charlie Gordon playing Daeron in this specific scene. I mean, the general outline, it could be Charlie. I can't tell if this is Charlie. So it's possible this is some other actor playing for Daeron, but then Charlie will show up later as the real Daeron. Or it could be that Charlie is, well, we got some Hightower cousin who kind of looks like him, dyed their hair, and passed it off as Daeron, because his uncle has never seen him, to have this ruse fake surrender to buy us some time while we're recovering from the losses we just took, biding our time because the Blacks have more dragons at this point. I don't know. It could be either way. But just, this is blurry enough, I'm not sure if it's Charlie. Even if it is Charlie, what are they doing here? But the fact that they have this shot of Daemon, the uncle, Matt Smith, examining Daeron's face, and this bizarre surrender in episode 4 out of 8, we know there's a battle with the Hightowers later, has got me thinking. But I'm urging a wait-and-see attitude of just, there's enough things going on here that I'm not sure. Yes, I admit I am very worried. But there's so many X factors here we don't know. Just the facts, the hard facts, as opposed to wild speculation that Sarah Hess eats dogs speculation. Hard facts are This is episode 4. We know Battle of Tumbleton is coming in 8, so this surrender can't last for long, if it even is real, which probably isn't. Point 2. Why would they bother to take on the production burden at this scale? The spy photos show the scale of the camp isn't something you waste without having a battle scene. To cast this many extras, to cast a prominent actor like James Norton as Ormund, it doesn't make sense. Point 3, why are they having this shot of Matt Smith examining Daeron's face like that to emphasize he doesn't know what Daeron looks like? I honestly do lean towards, I'm not saying this is the final answer, just short term, I think this is for Daeron. This is a fake Daeron. However, while I would be okay with that in a best case scenario, that within all of 5 to 10 minutes, like 5 minutes later in the same episode, they reveal, oh, that was an imposter Daeron just to buy us some time, that might actually end up being really cool, just to emphasize Daemon knows his own nephew so little that he doesn't know what he looks like. That could be fine, and oh, this was just, we're buying time. But that's the best case scenario, I admit this. That the worst case scenario, even accepting as a given that this is a fake Daeron, is that fake Daeron goes on to do other big plots, invented plots that we can't even conceive of. And this I do not forgive. Maybe it's something that someone suggested, oh, he'll try to free Alicent. And he couldn't do that as one person. And if he has help from agents of Varys that are still in the city, you wouldn't need to risk one of your few remaining dragon riders to do that. Why not just have the agents in the tunnels of the Red Keep free Alicent? You don't need Daeron himself to do that. That doesn't make sense. Or people worried, well, what if fake Daeron goes on to do stuff Maelor did? I see no evidence that they're doing that, and I'll hate it when I hear it, but it hasn't come out yet. That's just speculation. That's not evidence. I'm worried, but don't blame them for things that haven't happened yet. What rings true to me is I get a feeling based on based on the evidence, I think this is for Daeron, fake Daeron, to emphasize they don't know what he looks like. They have no relationship. My fear is that Daeron goes on to play a big role changing all sorts of other things. This could end up just being best case scenario, a 5-minute little fake out, which might actually be rather clever. I can't judge this before I see it in full context, but letting you know, I am worried about this. I am paying attention to this. I am not complacent about this. Nor am I going to give in to fear and McCarthyist wild speculation. Even if I end up being wrong, what if they really ruin this? The only thing we have control over is the manner in which we carry ourselves, that I would rather do the right thing going based on the evidence we have right now. I'm still looking forward to season 3, and I haven't heard anything explicitly crazy yet. Because thinking on it, this seems like a fake surrender with an imposter Daeron. Or there's a strong case for it being that I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. I will have to judge it as I see it. And they're not even done filming this set of things. What if tomorrow, next week, we know they're filming next week, we get spy photos of Daeron fighting in the Battle of Tumbleton? That the Hightower, Daeron would be on a dragon, he wouldn't be on the ground. But if we see really big, they can't hide action scenes, that's the thing. Fighting with Hightower soldiers in and around Tumbleton, because we can recognize the art style as Tumbleton. I wonder if the people going, oh no, it's just this weird surrender thing, will that melt away? Probably not, because some people want to look for problems rather than accurately trying to solve the mystery of what are they doing. So I have a wait-and-see attitude. I'm sorry to some people, like the whole Cersei thing, that you mistake caution for disloyalty. And no, it's, I don't know what's happening, I need to look at the evidence, and glass half full, nothing too crazy has happened yet. I'm not even sure if Charlie Gordon is actually, I thought HBO was going to make an announcement, and they didn't. You'd think they would, particularly because news sites are covering this now. Is Charlie necessarily, maybe someone else is credited as Daeron, who's an imposter, and Charlie is playing boy number 3, who turns out, like Ramsay Bolton, to be the real one. The old switcheroo. Hard to say. Maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. We have to keep more attention on this. A new piece of info just came out, so I'm splicing it in here at the last minute towards the end of the video, which really ties back into why I didn't rush out a video same day as the initial spy photos. That the first one came out Thursday, I'm posting this Sunday night. Yeah, because if you're actually trying to pay attention and figure out what was going on instead of just posting your first speculation, every couple of hours we kept getting a new set of spy photos or new spy footage, which was of the same shoot but slightly different, from a different angle or something. And each time it was just enough that I justified rewriting and re-recording sections of my videos here. So at this point, I'm up to, from one video, I've actually split this into 3 parts. You're currently listening to the second part, but that's why this is a little late, but I don't consider it late. I bothered to wait for evidence to see what exactly is going on, because we kept refining our understanding of this. Well, the new info we got is that there was a slightly longer piece of footage of the same scene that actually shows Daemon and Daeron after they walk up to a tent, which, okay, they walk into, but then the actors, they yell cut, and then the actors are there. And in this new slightly longer footage, after they're done walking from right to left, the Daeron actor's hands are clearly not tied behind his back. That you see the Daeron actor drop his hands to his sides. Even then, this has led to speculation, because we're not really sure, is the camera still rolling, or did they yell cut and this is the actor dropping his hands? The least we can say is that the actor's hands are not physically tied. And then with Wake the Dragon and House of Dragons, I was pointing out on Twitter, well, maybe they want to imply that the character's hands are tied, but it isn't worth tying the actor's hands up for multiple takes, how they go to the bathroom over and over again. But think about it, in the finished version, the camera would be looking at them from the front, from the shoulders up. Maybe they're trying to imply that the character's hands are tied, even though the actors aren't. So either way, how would we ever really prove that? All this speculation stemming from just, why is Daeron in a 10-second clip walking up to Daemon with his hands behind his back? They're not tied, but that could be one thing or another. And even then, regardless, Daemon could still be taking him prisoner without tying his hands up. So it doesn't really matter. But this presents in microcosm the entire problem. How so many people are just projecting their own wild speculation onto things and then reporting it as fact. And then other people parrot what they say, and it becomes, you've reduced this to the goddamn telephone game. And when you get really far downstream, it is disturbing seeing just how much elaborate theories people are willing to believe about Season 3 that they have no evidence for. And some people don't look forward to Season 3 based on little evidence, and fair enough, that just, I don't like the way it's going, versus you hate it very specifically for things you speculate they're going to do without much evidence. That, well, on the private Discord, where the real hardcore fan channels, they let me be on there just because I'm reporting on it too, we're discussing this. Our first line of thought was, oh, Daeron is meeting Daemon. I guess this is for a parlay. But, you think about it, they did this through letters in the books. They must want to do this face-to-face. And I guess for TV purposes, there's an argument you need to do that, because what are you going to do? Just have them reading a letter Daeron sent? I get that. Much as it's annoying, you need to do that. Then, a day later, someone, legitimately, these weren't crazy people, went, why is Daeron's hands always behind his back? In a 10-second shot. But, then we were wondering, wait, is this him taking him prisoner, or is it in exchange for Alicent? We weren't really sure. That was a valid speculation, because it is a thing of why is his hands like that. But we later updated it of the actor's hands aren't tied, and maybe they're implying that. It's possible, but we don't really know. They don't need to be tied to be a prisoner. And even then, we know this is not the Battle of Tumbleton. Claire Kilner is there. This is episode 4, right after the fall of King's Landing. It makes more sense, just that it's probably a parlay of some kind. That's not what I'm talking about, the debate about are his hands tied or not. It's what surprises me is the people on social media who have convinced themselves that Daeron is actively joining Daemon and Rhaenyra's side in the war. This is weird. This has actually been circling around the past 48 hours, based purely on this footage of Daemon is in the Hightower camp, and Ormund bends the knee, and Daeron walks up to him. He is actively going to help Daemon try to kill Vhagar and Aemond. Pause for emphasis. What the hell are you basing that on? And they go, well, it's obvious. Is this some sort of QAnon type deal of you speculate, and then whatever I speculate is fact? Schizophrenics do that. Or it's not just it's a speculation I really believe in based on this and this. It's what are you basing that on? Please tell me in the comments if you think this definitely means Daeron is joining them, so I know who to weed out. I'm just cracking heads. I don't have some compunction against permanently blocking people who I think are spouting gibberish. You can disagree with me. You could just say, I don't like the way they're doing this. I don't like that they're having a parlay versus this is definitely Daeron actively joining Rhaenyra. When even the hardcore spy channels were actually, what we were debating was, are his hands tied behind his back or not? Why are they always behind his back? Which was a legitimate thing. So, yeah, in microcosm, the whole thing ranges from the relatively straightforward, oh, this must be a parlay, to the plausible, which is, are his hands tied behind his back? Is he a prisoner or something? To the absurd, which is Daeron is going to be totally changing things, going to the other side, or he's going to be Maelor, or weird things that you have no basis for that based on this footage. There is nothing to suggest that wilder stuff. And yeah, if they were to bend the knee, Daeron would probably have to join the Night's Watch. It's kind of implied, but they wouldn't take him prison. I don't know what they do with that, but I'm walking back that given that we now doubt that Daeron is being physically handed off as a prisoner right now, in turn, based on that, I am leaning against that this is a fake Daeron, that they're passing off an imposter. I admit it's still plausible that they could be doing that. In a sense, I can't disprove it, and it would be a nod to the books and the whole, why haven't they announced who's playing him yet, because it's more than one person. But earlier in this video, I said I'm really convinced in that. Now I don't know what to believe, and I'm comfortable admitting that. As opposed to, well, I need to say what we're doing. It's just, the whole point of this video is, we're not really sure, don't jump to conclusions, and it could be as simple as they're having a parlay that doesn't go anywhere, and it's a good way to introduce Daeron. Fine. But this jumping to conclusion, it would be cringeworthy if it weren't so dangerous. I've said before, I think the thing Martin was angry about with Condal was cutting Maelor, cutting his death, and that Condal cut it because he felt it was gratuitously violent, and a second child murder would drive people away. I disagree with that, but I'm not going to disown Condal over that. That is a rational fear. And while it might have other ripple effects on the story, George has seemed unsympathetic to the practical demands of we can't do that, audiences will stop watching, and I don't know how they're going to handle it. I can see a way to handle removing Maelor intelligently. That doesn't mean they will. They could handle it very poorly, which is all the more shame, because if it's not the worst change I've ever heard of on paper because I can think of a good way to do it, doesn't mean they're going to make that change well. They might handle it very poorly. But in terms of all this stuff, they wouldn't be putting this much effort into the Daeron and Hightower army stuff if they were going to just surrender it and stuff. So keep an eye on this, and I hope one way or another this gets discussion going again, as opposed to, do I want, we've had months of quiet. Now we're going to have months of yelling. Will I mourn and miss the quiet months? I don't know. But the rampant speculation people at least burn themselves out pretty quickly because they have nothing of substance to say, versus cross-referencing the filming evidence. So if you want that as opposed to baseless accusations, please like and subscribe, and I do try to respond to every comment.